Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's Community Alliances Forum. And as everyone is entering the virtual room, we'll just give everyone a couple minutes here. Good morning. Looks like we have representation from Ultimate this morning. All right, well, we'll go ahead and start the forum. Please note that the forum will be recorded, and by attending, you agree to be recorded. Good morning. My name is Tiffany Kaikamanu, Community Relations Manager, and happy holidays. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Community Alliances Forum, focused on understanding and supporting the needs of Orange County's just involved populations, a group that is oftentimes overlooked when we think about access to healthcare. We also recognize that there isn't a lot of information readily available to serve this population. So this morning, we have an opportunity to hear and learn from subject matter experts to gain a better understanding of the unique health and transition needs of justice-involved individuals in Orange County with substance use disorder. We'll also learn about the challenges and successes in achieving access to SUD treatment and grassroots efforts taking place locally and the transformative work they are doing to support justice-involved individuals. Next slide. Next slide. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Community Alliances Forums are quarterly networking events that serve as a platform to discuss healthcare issues impacting our county. So on behalf of CalOptima Health, we want to thank all of you, our valued community stakeholders who are supporting a healthy Orange County. Next slide. For today's agenda, we will first hear from Project Kinship, an organization based here in Orange County, and the work they are doing to serve justice-involved individuals, which will then be followed by a presentation from Health Management Associates, where we will take a closer look at SUD and behavioral treatment needs, challenges, and successes. And we will have a final presentation on CalAim and the focus on serving justice-involved individuals and increase access to healthcare and community supports. We will close the event with questions and answers portion, so please feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your panel. Please note that event materials, including the agenda, presentation, and speakers' full bios, will be available in the chat box. Now, in order to access the materials, you will need to download them to your computer, but if unable to do so, not to worry, we will send all the materials in a follow-up email post-event. Next slide. Before we begin, we do want to acknowledge the diversity of our community stakeholders. So if you could just take a moment to type in your name, your organization, and title in the chat box. We want to see who is in this virtual room. And we see that some of you have already typed in your names. We have the City of Anaheim, representatives from CalOptima Health, Orange County Superior Court, Collaborative Courts, Garden Grove. It's great. We see lots of social workers and case managers, administrators who are part of today's forum. So welcome, everyone. We also want to share that if you would like to connect with someone who is attending the event, we will have a directory of attendees that will be shared up in the follow-up materials post-event as well. Fantastic. We have Abrazar represented, a lot of our community-based organizations, government entities, healthcare agency. It is really exciting to see the interest, as well as the representation from our community partners. And we have Prospect, we have our health networks represented as well. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Project Kinship's esteemed panel of presenters. We're starting with Steve Kim. In 1999, Steve Kim began his journey of recovery from drug addiction and incarceration. His last memory of incarceration was sitting in a visiting booth, staring through the glass and unable to hold his baby daughter during a visit. After feeling the weight of shame, he spent years navigating barriers to re-entry in hopes of providing a future for himself and his family. It was at rock bottom that he was blessed to encounter numerous individuals who walked him back to life. He went on to obtain a criminology, law, and society degree from University of California, Irvine, and a Master of Social Work degree from the University of Southern California. After hearing Father Greg Boyle from Homeboy Industries speak in one of his classes over 20 years ago, Steve dedicated his life to serving the community as he was helped. In 2014, Steve Kim connected with Mary Vu, a colleague from USC, who graciously dedicated 5 years to helping his dream of creating a community-based organization in Orange County that is now a part of Global Homeboy Network. Project Kinship was formed with a mission to provide support and training to lives impacted by incarceration, gangs, and violence through hope, healing, and transformation. I also want to introduce Madeline Rodriguez. Madeline proudly serves as a director of programs where she supports and directs effective programs and multidisciplinary teams focused on supporting and training lives impacted by incarceration, gangs, community violence, and trauma. With over 13 years of clinical experience and over 7 years in leadership, Madeline is known for her commitment for ensuring culturally competent, community-based behavioral and mental health services for children, youth, and adults. Madeline is passionate about bringing to fruition the vision of kinship, creating a world where hope lives and the cycle of violence and despair ends. She's also the co-founder and licensed marriage and family therapist for Simply Hope Private Practice and actively pursuing her doctorate in clinical psychology to further her expertise in trauma and mood disorders across the lifespan. Also joining Steve and Madeline is Raymond Sanchez. Raymond is the Peer Navigator Coordinator. Since 2014, Raymond has been serving and giving back to community in his capacity by providing opportunities for system-impacted individuals to lead peer navigation, mentorship, and living hope that transformation and healing are possible. A current student at Cal State Fullerton, soon to be graduate, and applying to a master's program, Raymond is helping lead both community expertise and behavioral health holistic care services to those who need it most. Please join me in welcoming Steve, Madeline, and Raymond to the virtual stage.
All right. All right, thank you. Can you all hear me?
We can.
All right. Thank you so much for the kind words. And I want to thank CalOptima for this opportunity to share and all of you who took this time out at 9:30 in the morning. I'm Steve from Project Kinship. And, we always like to start off our presentations with a little bit of fun. And so if you all would just be patient with me, we always do a one-word check-in. And we do it because Reggie from San Diego taught us that's important to do a one-word check-in, because as he was doing a life sentence in prison, he realized that every time he got angry, he got violent. And I can understand that, because when I was a kid, I'd get angry, I'd punch the wall with my right hand, I'd get angry and punch the wall with my left hand. And after both my hands were all jacked up, I'd get mad and I'd punch the wall with my head. And when Reggie said that, it really dawned on me that I didn't have the words to articulate how I felt. And it came out in anger and physical behaviors. And so we always do a one-word check-in, and we like to have a little bit of fun. So what I'm gonna do is, if you do me a favor, if you could just write in the chat box one word of how you're feeling this morning. And let's do one word and what you ate for breakfast, just to get us going. And if you do that, I will play some Jackson 5 in the background while we do that this morning. All right. So think about your one word and and let's do it. Here we go. What did he? Nice, protein, grateful, energized. A lot of people tired this morning. I'm with you. Optimistic. All right. Cold, fasting, motivated. That's right. Hopeful, grateful. Awesome. You guys are awesome. Yeah. Overwhelmed, energized, grateful. Sad, nothing. Oh, happy, grateful. All right. All right. Thank you so much. Blessed. Coffee. All right. All right. Thank you very much. For those of y'all who haven't eaten, I hope you're able to eat something soon. Hope you're able to have egg whites and spinach and turkey sausages. That's the way to do it, Jacqueline. That's what's up. Coffee. All right. Croissant sandwich, cheese and ham. Amazing. Well, I was at Disneyland last night. Yesterday was my birthday, and I had a corn dog, and I had a hard time waking up this morning, but it was worth every bite. So at Project Kinship, thank you. What we so nice, thank you. What we realize is that 100% of the people that we see have experienced significant trauma. What we also realized the past couple years is that there have been many folks who cried out for help and nobody came. And what we realize is when that happens, it begins to chip away at a person's worth. It begins to shape the way they see the world, and it impacts their soul. And we know that that's called shame. And so when we think about how do we dismantle shame, and so I want to, I'm a very simple guy, so I like to create things with that rhyme. And so if we know that shame isolates, healing exfoliates. I do want to coin that, so I did come up with that. I'm just saying. So I was thinking about what word rhymes with isolates and exfoliate. And so shame isolates. What does healing do? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If trauma isolates, what does healing do? Healing exfoliates. So if trauma isolates and healing exfoliates, what does it exfoliate? And we know that it exfoliates shame. And how do we exfoliate shame? What we've learned is that healing always happens when the other person is able to say, I see you. As a powerful thing happens when you're able to see somebody and you say, I see you and I will walk with you, and people begin to transform. And so in these particular groups, we're very blessed to be with you all because all of you here are doing the work. All of you here each day go to work and say, I want to make a world a better place. I want to walk with those who are in the deepest valleys, and I want to remind people of their worth. What is the magic thing at Project Kinship? We have a lot of programs and we've grown and we're going to share about these things, but what we really do is we've created a space where folks can come and feel their worth. And as we provide service, in return, we're served back by the folks in the community who are carrying more than they can bear. They remind us what it means to be able to wake up each day and say, no matter what life throws at me, I'm going to take one step at a time and move towards healing. And so we're really privileged. Every day we get to do this work. And so if I just show you the first slide, it's our mission statement. And our mission is to provide support and training to lives impacted by incarceration, gangs, and violence through hope, healing, and transformation. And our vision is we want to see a world where hope lives and the cycle of despair ends. You know, like I mentioned, we have a lot of programs, and we moved into a larger building a few years ago, and they wanted me to write a quote when you first walk in the entrance. So I was honored, and I was thinking about what to write. And I don't know if any of you have ever had writer's cramp Well, I got writer's cramp. And so I was trying to figure out what do I write on the wall when you first walk into our lobby. And I thought, crap, everybody's going to see this. So I got nervous. I go, it's got to be something good. So I was trying to inspire myself. I put some candles on. I put some Mariah Carey in the background on. Well, we're recording this, but yeah, I put some music on and I was trying to inspire myself. And so 10 hours later, came up with something like, in your darkest moment, never give up hope. There's a beacon of light that will lead you to a community of kinship, blah, 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 blah. Well, the day before it goes up, Ruben, who we love dearly, was sent to prison at the age of 16, was doing juvenile life, tattoos all over his face, was sitting in the lobby. And I shared with him my quote. I said, what do you think, man? I'm gonna put it up on the wall. And he says, well, it's all right. And I was like, it's all right. I go, I spent 10 hours on this thing. I go, what would you put up there? And he's much more humble than me. And he says, I wouldn't want my words up there. He says, but if I was to write something, I would write, welcome to kinship, where judgment and pain are left at the door. You are home. And he came up with this in 10 seconds. So if we can see the next slide, whose quote do you think's on the wall when you walk into Project Kinship? Of course, the great Ruben. 10 hours with my long windowed coat, and in 10 seconds, Ruben says, welcome to kinship, where judgment and pain are left at the door. You are home. Well, I asked him, how did you come up with this quote? And he said, it was very easy. He says, when I come to kinship, he goes, I feel like I'm not judged. I feel like I'm at home. Because outside of kinship, when people look at me, it looks like they've been into a sour lemon when they see me. But when I come here, I feel like I'm at home. And I think about that. And all of us just want a place where we can call home. Before I turn over to Maddie, I'll share with you one of the things that I remember when I was in my addiction, my mom would always say, I just want my son back. Steve, I just want you back. And I was in so much pain because of my trauma that I didn't want to feel. And feeling also can be a scary thing. And over the years, I've had many amazing people walk by me and remind me of my worth and remind me that hope is possible. And it's a really beautiful thing to be able to serve with all of you today and to also have an amazing relationship with my mom today, as she was always crying back in the day saying, I want my son back. And I just want to thank you for all the work that you all do as every day as we help those who are marginalized, who are experiencing significant trauma. All of you, in many ways, find family members, find their children back, their husbands back, their partners back. And so I'm going to pull back. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, the great Maddie.
Maddie, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure, an honor, privilege to be with you all this morning. Thank you for taking the time to relish in community together this morning. As Steve mentioned, one of the core foundations of kinship is ensuring that everyone feels that they have a place to call home or have that feeling of safety, security, and individuals with support. As he also mentioned, as we get to know the stories of every participant that comes through our doors that we have the privilege to encounter or meet, they all come with stories of trauma. If we go to the next slide, in all of the work that we do, we understand that trauma and adverse childhood experiences play a very big role in development and impacts in life, even when we don't realize it. Back in 1995-97, Dr. Folletti and Kaiser Permanente led one of the largest research studies on childhood trauma, abuse, neglect, and other adverse experiences, and tracked the long-term effects of those experiences. And what they found was that the more adverse childhood experiences that individuals had in the beginning and in the formative years of development, the more risks medically, mental health wise, socially were impacted over time. So if we understand trauma as an emotional response to a terrible event, ACEs represent the adverse childhood events that are a combination of traumatic experiences that have negative lasting impacts on health and well-being. And as you see in that diagram, if an individual has more adverse experiences at conception, the more risk that they are for early death, disease, adoption of health risk behaviors, social, emotional, cognitive impairment, disrupted neurodevelopment. These are things that we see throughout the lifespan. And these are things that we see here at Kinship when we hear the stories. And what this has led us to also honor is that we're helping change the narrative. If we go to the next slide, we're used to a narrative of asking children, youth, and even some adults, what's wrong with you? We see all these complicated behaviors or these risky behaviors, and we don't understand, or community doesn't understand why can't they just change? Why can't they just do something different? But when we look through the lens of trauma and adverse childhood experiences and understanding how these impact each and every one of us, or those that you care about or someone you know, if we go to the next slide, then we're changing that narrative from what is wrong with you to asking questions like, what happened to you? Help me understand. Because if we can get to the roots of the traumas and these experiences, and as Steve mentioned in his coined term, we can exfoliate those pains through healing to get to a healthy place. A holistic health is what we envision for all of our community together. And so here at Kinship, if we go to the next slide, as Steve mentioned, we're really privileged and blessed to be able to serve individuals throughout the lifespan. We have programs that reach children and youth, their respective families, transitional aged youth, as well as adults and older adults. The reentry services that we provide entail services that include case management, benefits enrollment, in-reach and outreach services, work and education readiness, mental health support, support groups, substance use, and community service support and hours. We go to the next slide. And so when we talk about all these services that we have, a lot of individuals are like, well, we hear about Project Kinship, but what are those different services and how do they work to support our community? Well, it all started with the restorative practices and the intervention work happening in the schools. And we're very fortunate and blessed to be in over 30 schools throughout Orange County and 2 schools in ABC Unified School District, providing restorative practices to hope to deter and early intervene with youth so that they don't become system involved. We're looking at their stories, we're asking what's happening and supporting them, the school administrators, the campuses, as well as their respective families to hopefully get them connected and deterred and getting them the help and support they need early on. We look at our Conexiones program, that's our other initiative through the Santa Ana Unified School District that allows us to support youth who are re-entering community from being system impacted with intensive case management, mental health support, peer support, and a lot of wraparound services that really optimize reducing the risk of recidivism, but most importantly, helping these youth and their families heal. We work through then our Community Support and Recovery Center and our PK Cares program, which allows us to serve individuals 18 and up. And when we say 18 and up, again, we're very privileged to have individuals 18 and we have individuals that are 72 who have been system impacted, who need hope, who need supportive services and individuals who can walk with them, to journey with them as they try to find their place back in community. We're fortunate to have our team at the Intake Release Center, and at our home base, we provide mental health services, substance use counseling, recovery circles, intensive case management, and all of the basic needs support that they could need to make sure that they have a safe place to stay, they have food to eat, and more importantly, finding a sense of purpose back in community. And we have various pathways that we're able to do that. If we go to our next slide, one of our other supportive programs and services that help with that are also our CHIOC program, which is our community health initiative of Orange County that we're partnered with and very blessed to be able to provide our community members with Medi-Cal and CalFresh enrollment directly without having to go to the SSA office or having to figure out paperwork. Our team's able to support doing that directly with our community members, as well as providing in-reach support. So if we have individuals who we know are going to be released from custody within 90 days, our team is able to go and meet with those individuals to ensure that they have access to those much needed services upon release. We go to our workforce development department. We're privileged to have active partnerships with many of our community colleges, universities, employers in the county that are invested in supporting our community members in finding purpose, finding meaningful work, and giving a second chance, and as Steve likes to say, for some, a first real opportunity at being able to have education and or employment opportunities. We also have our PK groups where we're privileged to have both here at our home base as well as in custody. We have several groups that we run within the juvenile justice system to provide weekly support for those youths who are currently incarcerated, as well as meeting with some of the adults as well who are currently in custody to maintain a consistent touch point with them, to know that there are people waiting to support them upon their release. We'll go to the next slide. So again, we have a plethora of programs, but in essence, what we say here at Kinship is there's no wrong door to access any and all of our services here at Kinship. Whether we meet individuals at a school site in front of the intake release center, or behind, a glass window in a facility, we're invested in meeting with our community members to see if they're interested in support and determining what areas of support they're in need or someone they care about are in need of, so that we can optimize a full care and team for them to walk and journey with them. And whether it's us providing that service directly or linking them to the appropriate help, it's ensuring that each individual we come across is inspired with hope and knowing that there are community members committed to their journey. If we go ahead and move over to the next slide. Why this is important? Well, we understand that individuals recently released from detention facilities without proper support are at extreme higher risk of reoffending. The risk of recidivism is extremely high if individuals don't have employment, they don't have stable housing, if they are not linked to substance use treatment and support, or have the appropriate social support to help them be successful. So here at Kinship, we try to eliminate those barriers by supporting the needs to get them access to these very imperative touch points to reduce that risk of recidivism. But as we said before, ensuring holistic care for our community members so that they can be healthy and whole. We go to the next slide. Words from our very own founder and Commander-in-Chief, Steve Kim. We leave with this quote that says, "The heartbeat of Project Kinship holds compassion and inclusion. It's a place where hope lives and people are reminded that they are not a mistake. Something powerful happens as this truth is embraced and people feel their worth." At Project Kinship, we want everyone to know, and you even included, everyone that's here on this call, you have worth, you have purpose, and we relish in the joy of kinship together with you all. And we thank you for allowing us the time this morning to share a little bit about us with you, and hopefully leaving a piece of us with you this morning as well. We'll go to the next slide. And as I wrap up my portion, Raymond has been a pivotal piece of Project Kinship since its onset of existence. And so Raymond, you've been here from the beginning and seeing where we were at then to where we're at now and where we're going. What are some insights you'd like to share with their community today, just regarding how you've been able to see these things unfold firsthand?
Thank you, Maddie. So I was introduced to Project Kinship back in 2014 as I was wrapping up a 10-year sentence. And like most of our population that are about to be released come with the same barriers, same stress, the same questions like, what's next for me? What's out there for me? No one's going to understand what I'm going through. And I came up with the same mentality, being gang involved, going through multiple traumas. I had so much baggage coming out. And as I came into through the doors of Project Kinship, I found a safe place. I found a place where I was able to really be seen, somewhere where I could rest and finally start this journey of healing. And when we first started, it was a very small group. You know, there was a group of like probably 6 of us max. As we went into the community more and more, we found out there was a big need for this type of services, and not just that, the healing part. Our communities have been you know, plagued by so much gang violence, so much trauma, that they just wanted somewhere to rest and feel safe. So as we started these support groups, we found ourselves at one time with like 20-something gang-involved individuals, all rivals at one time. And I noticed that at first I thought it was a mistake that we were doing. Maybe we overstepped ourselves, but I noticed they were there for the same purpose I was there. They were looking for healing. They were looking for something better. They were looking to better their communities themselves. And as we walked into this journey with them with healing, we were able to hire a few of them. And I would say we hired about 11 or 12 of them, and they're all actively college students like myself. I was able to really like ground myself and really start putting some effort into education. I'm about to go into my master program, but we just provided a safe place for individuals to really find their worth. And one individual I had the privilege to work with and bring on board was Silvestre. So as it's always been an honor and a privilege to work with him, because I've seen him really interact with our community. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce Silvestre.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, community, for this privilege just to be with all of you today. My name is Silvestre Serrano, and a few years ago, I woke up to a horrible nightmare being in prison with 3 life sentences. And I soon realized that it wasn't a nightmare, it was reality. And I had to reflect, right, on life and do some self-examination. What brought Silvestre to prison with 3 life sentences? And I had to go back to my childhood, to the root of everything, to domestic violence, to drug addiction, alcoholism, abuse, verbally, physically, just seeing a lot of crime in the neighborhood, a lot of defiance, a lot of violence, to the point where I believed that I was worthless, like Maddie stated, that I was defective, that I was stupid, that I was worth nothing. The ridicule, the rejection, it affects a person. It affected me tremendously. I gave up on myself. I had no love for myself, therefore I had no love for others. And I chose to act out violently. And I inflicted violence emotionally, physically, psychologically, and was okay with it. I believe no one cared about me, especially those who loved me. My father, who I just wanted acceptance from. I wanted to be loved. And when I didn't receive that, it damaged me. And I told myself that I would never let no one hurt me in that way. And it's ironic because I went from being a victim to being a victimizer. I criticized my father. I said I would never be like him, and I turned out to be worse, controlling, abusive, stubborn, hot-tempered. And I didn't realize it. And it took me to go through juvenile hall, drug addiction, alcoholism, gang activity, criminal activity, realizing that, you know what? That isn't who Silvestre is. I was able to go back and want to show my family that I wasn't that ruthless, callous, violent individual that society, especially the judge, portrayed me to be when he sentenced me to 3 life terms. Though I fell into a depression for about 2 years, not wanting to accept the fact that I was in prison, eventually with prayers, with faith, with encouragement. My family, very supportive. It wasn't the friends, those girls or the gang. It was my family who I abandoned. They were there, attentive to me, supportive, encouraging. My sister, rest in peace, Yolanda, she's a rock. And she always emphasized education. And my little brother, Serafin, who would go visit me, would always tell me about what he was doing out here in society, how he was mentoring, how he was going to join the halls. And I told him, bro, I want to do that with you. I need to pass the word out to our young people, our community, that they don't need to believe that they're worthless, that they need to know how precious, how valuable, how smart they are. Because when a person loses faith in himself, he loses faith on life. So it's no wonder that our young people are out there in the street putting their lives at risk, because subconsciously they don't value their lives. Maybe they were told by someone, maybe they were also victimized in some form or another, and they started to believe that they were worthless. And I made it a point to want to come out and join my brother and join other advocates. And before going to board, my brother knows Steve, he knows Raymond, he knows a lot of people from kinship. They wrote a support letter for me. I went to the board 2019 for the second time, and thank God they found me suitable. I was released 5 months later in May 21st of 2019. And I'm so appreciative that I had to go back to thank those people who believed in me. So I went to Project Kinship with my brother. And just like Steve said earlier, you know, as soon as I walked in, I started meeting people. I felt I was at home. I was able to relate. They understood me and I understood them. And I didn't feel out of place. I didn't feel defective. And I got to know the guys. As a matter of fact, one of the young guys I met in there was a young man named David. At that time, he had just recently lost his brother to gang violence. So I connected and met him, and I knew that that's where I belonged. And after months, they asked me to volunteer with joy and gratitude. I did so. And eventually they offered me a position as a peer navigator. And I started to work there at the IRC. So at the IRC, it's the main jail in Santana where we receive people that are being released. So I'm able to see myself in these men and women that come out. And sometimes they don't realize how hurt they are. They're still in denial. They're still traumatized. They don't want help. They're not used to it. Nobody's ever reached out to them. No one has ever demonstrated some of them love. So they don't know how it looks like. But not only were we able to be of service to these men and women and help them with resources, but also their families who come to visit them, to leave them money, or to basically inquire, how are they doing? Are they even here? I haven't heard from them. These are mothers, these are grandmothers, these are wives. And I listen to them. I feel their trauma because I know that trauma. I saw my mom going to visit me for so many years, 26 and a half years of visiting me wherever I was at. I seen her sadness, her brokenness. So my heart goes out to these women, to these mothers. I have empathy today, and I'm able to understand them, and I listen to them. I give them an opportunity to vent, to share what they're going through. And then I'm able to give them hope. I'm able to give them courage. I'm able to also be honest with them and tell them that their son or daughter has an illness right now. And it isn't until they realize it and they want help that the transformation is going to begin. But these women are so appreciative that someone is listening to them, that someone is being honest. And that I love that. We know that in the household, there's generational trauma. It's not just the parents, it's the grandparents, it's the great-grandparents. It wasn't until I realized what my father went through, how he was raised by his father, how abusive and controlling his father was to him. That's why my father raised me and all of us. So I'm just privileged to be able to work at Project Kinship at the IRC, to receive our kids also at the office when they come, to participate in the crew group, to just be of service, to see them come in sometimes. You know, they come in with the walls, they're defensive, you know, they don't trust people because people have hurt them. Gangs, violence, drug addiction, alcoholism, violent behavior, those are not the problem. Those are the symptoms. The problem is the abandonment, the rejection, the abuse, physical, verbal, sexual, death, loss, incarceration. That is the problem. And that is what I have the privilege to work with men and women at Project Kinship every day to help heal these people that are they come in wounded, and they just want to be loved and accepted and validated. Whether they're 16 years old or whether they're 35 years old. And I'm able to be of service. I'm able to show them what's in my heart. And I don't even consider this a job. This is my passion. I finally found my calling. And I'm just honored to be able to be here. My transition from prison has been difficult these 3.5 years, but something that has been very helpful is having a strong support network. And I have that at Kinship. I have that with my brother. I have that with friends from church. Someone that I can go to and just talk to and vent and just get everything out of me, what I'm going through, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. It's a great feeling to be able to get it all out and not carry it bottled up like it did for so many years. I understand now what led me to prison, and I want to help others, lead them out of prison. And one of the main things was not having a self-esteem, not having self-worth. And I was able to find that. I was able to find that in prison, going to earning my GED, high school diploma, earning an AA. Right now, I'm privileged to be able to go back to school as well here, finishing off my Golden 4, and hopefully in a year or so, maybe less, going to university to get my BA. My goal and my mission is to help people heal emotionally, psychologically, and at the same time help myself heal. We're all together and we all have a responsibility. My responsibility, the way that I make amends, is by trying to build our communities. From after so many years of destroying it, I want to build it. I want it to be a place where you could come and you could interact regardless of where you grew up, what city, what color you are, what you believe in. We all hurt the same, and that's what unites us. Those are the things that we have in common. And that is what I am so privileged to be here. And I thank each one of you for your attentiveness, and thank you very much.
Silvestri, thank you so much for sharing your story. Not only is it inspiring, but it really offers an opportunity to have a deeper understanding and perspective. So I can't thank you enough for just sharing your story and allowing us to walk with you. I want to thank Project Kinship. The words that I wrote down that resonate so loud are hope, acceptance, healing, and full wraparound support for individuals and their families. And I'm so grateful that they're here, because this offers an opportunity for our community stakeholders to know more about Project Kinship and be able to work alongside you and access your services. So with that, I want to thank you for your presentation. Now we're going to move on to our second set of presenters with Health Management Associates. And Rich, Elizabeth, Dr. Chang, they're going to be able to share a deep, broader perspective in terms of SUD treatment and behavioral health needs, some of the challenges and support. So with that, I would like to introduce Richard Vanden Heuvel. As a former behavioral health executive, Rich knows how to help organizations successfully navigate the challenges of the health reform era. Rich has facilitated regional and statewide technical and strategic responses to opportunities presented by the Affordable Care Act. He has extensive expertise collaborating with government partners at all levels, building consensus among diverse stakeholders, and moving projects from conception to completion. His background in providing direct services offers an important perspective for determining the impact of policy on communities, families, and individuals. Prior to joining HMA, Rich served as a CEO for a newly formed public behavioral health managed care organization. And as the organization's first employee, he was responsible for building it from the ground up. He oversaw an annual budget of over $250 million to provide specialty behavioral health services across a diverse population and geographic area. I'd also like to introduce Elizabeth Stanley Salazar, who has worked in the behavioral services field in California, both in government and community-based provider organizations for 40 years. At Behavioral Health Services, she directed the opening, licensing, and accreditation of the first freestanding chemical dependency recovery hospital in Southern California. She joined the Monterey County Public Health Department as the County Alcohol and Drug Program Administrator and went on to the appointment as the Deputy Chief Director of the State Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs. She began her tenure as Vice President, Director of Program Services of 25 years with Phoenix Houses of California in 1994, and oversaw the expansion of in-custody treatment services in 13 prisons and the integration of mental health services for co-occurring disorders and trauma into Phoenix Houses services model. She is currently working with HMA as a learning collaborative coach under the Jail Mat and Drug Court Project, supporting local teams in policy and service improvements for individuals involved in the justice system, in the criminal justice system. And also joining Rich and Elizabeth are Dr. Chang, who is Orange County's Deputy County Health Officer over Correctional Health Services, which serves the adult and juvenile detention facilities in Orange County. He is board certified in family medicine and addiction medicine. Dr. Chang was a member of Orange County team that participated in the first medically assisted treatment expansion project, MAT in county criminal justice system that started in 2018. Dr. Chang credits the lessons and connections built from the collaborative in helping Orange County to vastly expand MAT services in the OC jail system. Please join me in welcoming Rich, Elizabeth, and Dr. Chang to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Tiffany. And just want to share our thanks with CalOptima for the opportunity to participate in the event today. And we are absolutely honored and echo all the well wishes in the chat to participate in this event with Project Kinship. So Silvestre, Raymond, Maddie, Steve, we're going to have the attempt, if you'll advance to the next slide, please. We're going to attempt to put some of the data around some of the things you heard from Project Kinship, and then get into specifics about what's currently happening in Orange County today. And no better authority on that than Dr. Chang. So we will review, and these are the goals, so hopefully what we'll accomplish. The epidemiology of substance use disorder and corrections environment at a high level, and we'll keep it moving so you don't, so we don't ruin that vibe you've got going. But then also describe the co-occurring issues in substance use disorder, trauma, and behavioral health related challenges for populations in a correctional environment. You should be able to list at least 3 challenges and a couple of successes in achieving access to substance use disorder treatment. and as well as describing 3 best practices. Hint, peer-run organizations like Project Kinship is a best practice. So there's a freebie right off the top. And then, of course, again, the current and hopefully future state and direction moving forward with Orange County related to successful reentry processes. So with that, if you'll advance the slide deck, please. So as we get into the epidemiology of substance use disorder in a correctional environment, probably the most important thing I want to get across is that, and you'll see this in the data in a moment, justice is not blind in the United States. I don't think that's necessarily news to everyone, but I want to say it overtly. The cycle of incarceration, as you heard from the personal experiences, is not an isolated event, but part of a complex social and economic system. Anyone associated with healthcare these days has probably heard the term social determinants of health, but when you think about opportunity, educational opportunity, economic opportunity, and lack of such opportunities are really correlated with higher rates of incarceration. And obviously that becomes a spiral then, because once someone's had the experience of being incarcerated, there are more limited economic opportunities, housing opportunities, et cetera. So it can very easily, without some of the supports you've heard referenced today, lead to a cycle or a spiral of recidivism, as was referenced. Next slide, please. So who is incarcerated in this country? When I say justice is not blind, we're talking about disproportionate representation of folks who've had limited economic opportunity, the poor, populations of color and other minorities, and of course, individuals with mental health needs and substance use disorder. These all go hand in hand. So I think it's just really important to understand that if we want to address cycles of incarceration for a lot of individuals, many individuals in our nation, the access point to treatment in the community actually starts in jails. And I fully believe, and in my experience, that's actually correlated with the more severe the treatment need, the more likely that becomes. So I think it's very important to understand that and see the jail as an actual point of treatment in the community, not just the place where people are jailed. And also remember, a huge number of individuals in jail have not been sentenced or found guilty of anything. They are, strictly speaking, when we talk about county jails, arrested, but that does not mean they are yet adjudicated. So I think it's important to understand that when we think about who is in our jail systems. Next slide, please. So as you heard referenced, again, this is what the data tells us, but I mean, I think the personal stories illustrate it most effectively. Of course, there is much higher correlation with individuals who've been incarcerated or are incarcerated with experience of trauma, and incarceration itself. There's actually a post-incarceration syndrome, which is a discrete subtype of post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of being incarcerated. So think about all that discussion you heard of past childhood ACEs and trauma, and then think about the ongoing trauma of being incarcerated. Everyone in the behavioral health field has heard of the phenomena or the expected phenomena of self-medication, for instance, and you'll see that referenced here. The likelihood of overdose, specifically loss of life, is astronomical for the justice-involved population within 2 weeks of release into the community. And as we get into this topic, that's where things like reentry supports planning, case management, Project Kinship referenced, and we'll get into in more depth, specific to Orange County, are so critically important because of that extensively high risk. Next slide, please. So for providers, and again, you heard reference to some of the services provided in terms of education and prevention. The goals are communities and providers. Obviously, providers tend to be implementing the will of the community in terms of treatment. The goal is, of course, to help achieve recovery prior to needing to access treatment through incarceration. So prevention, if you will. While in treatment, and this is not the norm nationally, but it is the goal. And I think as you will hear, Orange County has made exemplary strides in this regard. There also has to be treatment when in custody, and the custody is responsible for the community standard of care. And that's not what the community happens to have. That's what the community should have in terms of the community standard of care. And then, as you will know, working towards successful reentry and that continuation, if that is the access point of treatment, treatment continuity. And then again, last but not least, recognizing the trauma both pre and post or as a result of incarceration as a factor and important consideration in that treatment, how we work with individuals, how we support them to be successful upon reentry into the community. Next slide, please. So let's talk a bit more about the treatment needs for the justice-involved population. Move forward, please. So individuals who are justice-involved for all the factors we've discussed, as we know, who tends to become justice-involved and who is incarcerated in this country, the issue of social determinants of health. Of course, we see higher rates of physical and behavioral health diagnoses. We know that opioid-related overdose deaths, it specifically increase the risk of mortality, increase the risk of death, for which we have not found successful recovery from death, Narcan notwithstanding. And specifically, there are also higher rates of other co-occurring disorders, which is really relevant when we think about treatment needs and coordinated and integrated care, high blood pressure, asthma, diabetes. Frequently, we see these with folks with substance use disorder, behavioral health disorder, no different for the justice-involved population. Next slide, please. To put a little bit finer point on this, and I can't emphasize this enough, and what I really want you to take away from this slide and this data source, overdose is the #1 cause of mortality upon release from incarceration. It's the greatest risk. The other thing I want you to take away from this is this data comes from 2013. That was before we had a fentanyl epidemic. So I significantly doubt that this has improved. So when we talk about MAT and access to care, medically assisted treatment and care coordination, really fundamentally critical, since we don't recover from death, to make sure we are addressing the #1 cause of mortality. Next slide, please. And again, and I apologize, this is not a parade of good news, but these are the facts. There are a disproportionate number of people, again, incarcerated with mental health disorder. What I think is probably most notable here is the rate of individuals with moderate to severe mental illness. What I want you to know, based on my nearly 30 years in community-based behavioral health, is I've worked my whole career, at least the first part of my career, on deinstitutionalization from mental health facilities. And in point of fact, as a nation and from a policy perspective, I have come to conclude that we haven't deinstitutionalized, we've cross-institutionalized from treatment facilities to the correctional environment. I cannot tell you the last time I went through a correctional facility where there wasn't someone awaiting a very severely needed psychiatric placement. So it is exceedingly prevalent. And again, oftentimes this is the safety net for individuals with the most significant forms of mental illness. Next slide, please. And then, of course, as we talk about trauma and we talk about ACEs, this can also be generational and throughout the family. The impact of incarceration obviously can add trauma, including separation of children and families, loss of autonomy. There can be risk in a correctional environment. As a matter of fact, it's quite challenging to screen for anxiety and depression in a correctional environment, because that's a natural reaction to a correctional environment, is to feel anxiety and depression, as you heard reference. So all of this can actually have a detrimental effect on mental health. It's a little bit Captain Obvious, but I think it's important to recognize that it impacts the entire family. Next slide, please. When we talk specifically about substance use disorder, again, the key takeaway here, when you read through the different percentages, the extreme prevalence of substance use disorder, as we'll reference in a further slide, and this comes from NIDA and National Institutes of Health. But one of the most logical reasons for comprehensive evidence-based substance use treatment in a correctional environment is the prevalence of substance use disorder And when you work through all the math, what it boils down to is 85% of the US prison population either has a substance use disorder, had one at the time of their offense, or committed a substance-related crime, meaning a crime to get access to substances or while under the influence of substance. 85%. And if that's the US prison population, that likely is a good proxy indicator because no one goes directly to prison. That's a pretty good proxy indicator for what's occurring in our county jails nationally. Next slide. So how do we meet the treatment needs of the justice-involved population of individuals who are accessing treatment at jails? Next slide, please. So some obviously, these are fairly obvious, but key things to consider. We know that treatment works. Comprehensive evidence-based treatment in correctional environments works. Inadequate treatment contributes to that overdose risk and death we shared. And the space that I worry most about, and this is national data. This is not specific to Orange County or even California. So I want to be clear on that. But nationally, the gaps in treatment definitely contribute to that risk. And it is not the norm for individuals to have access to evidence-based treatment in jails nationally. Again, we'll have some good news related to this, related to Orange County in a minute, but it's still very, very rare. Next slide. Reasons for this definitely include stigma, also includes candidly a little bit of a belief that that the incarceration itself is not sufficient punishment. It should be additionally punishing, I guess, to be incarcerated. You can run into these beliefs when you access it. In addition, we do not generally as a nation still accept things like substance use disorder as a chronic illness or a chronic brain disease. We are much improved at saying that substance use disorder is a chronic brain disease, but as a matter of national policy, as the data reflected on the previous slide, we often don't act like it. There can also be realistic fears and concerns and unrealistic fears and concerns. I want to be clear on that, related to the potential for drug diversion, contraband, stigma related to we're switching a drug for a drug, not understanding particularly that medically assisted treatment is an evidence-based treatment for a chronic brain disease. Staffing in the correctional environment, both in healthcare and custody, is extremely challenging everywhere in the nation. And of course, just plain getting access because of the secure environment, scheduling, security clearance, et cetera, there can be some real practical and logistical challenges to treatment in a correctional setting. Next slide. I would say the number one overarching cause, though, still remains stigma. I want to be very clear on that. So in terms of nationally accepted principles for treatment of substance use disorder in criminal justice settings, we need to accept and understand that SUD is a brain disease and affects behavior. Recovery requires effective treatment and management over time, that it must last long enough to produce stable behavioral changes, and that needs to be individualized. And that, of course, with any treatment approach for any illness, screening and assessment are the first steps. Target behaviors that are associated with criminogenic or criminal behavior should also be a focus of treatment, because we're also trying to prevent recidivism and reincarceration. Next slide, please. Treatment planning and treatment providers should be aware of the correctional setting itself and the supervision and security requirements. Correctional settings' first role in every case is safety and security first for the inmates, the community, and the staff. So it's important to understand that it's not your everyday treatment environment. Continuity of care upon reentering is critical and one of the most challenging things to address, because incarcerated environments are a fairly controlled, actually highly controlled environment. How do we maintain progress upon reentry into the community is a significant challenge nationally. Rewards and sanctions are part of pro-social behavior and treatment participation. Correctional environments are usually a little more, generally speaking, comfortable with sanctions than rewards, but definitely possible. We definitely need integrated treatment for all of the issues that individuals are struggling with, inclusive of medication. And that treatment planning has to include a consideration of all the issues that come with reentry, up to and including serious chronic medical conditions that are most common in a correctional environment. And these are nationally accepted principles in planning. Next slide, please. So again, and I think you've seen obvious reasons why goals for treatment. Treatment in jail must be trauma informed, must include screening and assessment and stabilization. The evidence in the data shows us we know so much more about brain functioning and brain disease than we ever have in the past, like when I went to graduate school. But we know that medically assisted treatment is part of the solution for individuals with the most severe forms, particularly of opioid use disorder, to stabilize brain chemistry so that individuals actually can benefit from treatment. Inclusive and one of the most common evidence-based practices, in addition to medically assisted treatment, you have to have effective behavioral therapy. So the simple way to look at this is stabilize first, then help rebuild a life with a combination of therapy, case management, and planning, including around criminogenic behaviors and things that pathways in life people were on that led to their incarceration. Next slide, please. Integrated care, the most important piece here is just to understand that this requires an integrated approach, because oftentimes, just like in the community, you can see silos between mental health, substance use disorder treatment, and physical health. And overall, that's very hard to navigate even as a patient. Overall, one treatment plan, one integrated approach is the most effective approach that's been validated in the data and we found. It's difficult to do, but necessary. Go ahead. And again, related to silos, just some things to think about. I won't spend time on this because this isn't necessarily specific to a jail environment on the internal side. But again, having case staffing where we look at the whole person to determine their needs and individualize their treatment is the key takeaway here. Because as I noted, silos exist in the community, silos exist in jail settings. Breaking down those silos to get to one consistent treatment plan is the holy grail of supporting individuals in their recovery. Next slide, please. And just as I noted, I noted the 85% statistic earlier, what I also want people to be aware of is this DOJ guidance that came out April 5th of 2022. I guess the good news is DOJ, Department of Justice. This is the second example on the second page that came out in April of this year. Guidance and unfortunately litigation guides a lot of healthcare policy in corrections environments writ large. You can see what's highlighted there. The DOJ has acknowledged under the Americans with Disabilities Act that it is not okay to discontinue medications for opioid use disorder as a blanket policy when somebody comes into a correctional environment simply because we have a policy that doesn't support what is the evidence-based practice. I think it's important to keep an eye on that. Orange County was definitely an early adopter of evidence-based treatment back to 2018, as you heard. So just want you to be aware that nationally the movement is happening. Next slide, please. So particularly, and this gets into what wasn't in my, I apologize for the lengthy bio. What wasn't in the lengthy bio is my full-time work now, literally all day, every day, is around corrections-based, evidence-based treatment, which includes planning for successful reentry into the community. In California, you heard the reference in Dr. Chang's bio. My organization, Health Management Associates, works with the California Department of Healthcare Services. Originally were funded under state opioid funds, now legislatively appropriated, which we're honored by. The opportunity to expand access to evidence-based treatment. That's why we work with Orange County. We've worked with over 37 counties in California, coaching multiple counties in California myself to implement evidence-based treatment. And with that, next slide, please. What's probably most relevant and most important, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chang to highlight this, is what's actually happening in Orange County. Because as I've said, I do this work all across the country, and Orange County is exceptionally advanced in their approach and very progressive in trying to assure evidence-based treatment and access within the jails. Dr. Chang?
Thank you, Rich. So as Rich mentioned and in my bio earlier, Orange County was part of the 2018 Learning Collaborative, that original first cohort of around 26 different counties that attended. And from there, we kind of went all in to expand our MAT services within the county jail system. And so currently, we continue and initiate all forms of MAT for OUD patients who are clinically appropriate and agree to this treatment. That includes naltrexone, methadone, and buprenorphine, both the sublingual and the long-acting injectable version. Orange County Healthcare Agency provides the healthcare services in the adult and juvenile detention facilities. And our treatment includes evidence-based screening and assessment, MAT, and behavioral health counseling. And that includes the stimulant use disorder and other substance use disorders as well. Our evidence-based treatment includes withdrawal management. So anybody coming in on any type of opioids, we will start on an buprenorphine or agonist-based withdrawal with the option to continue if the patient chooses to do so. We also obviously treat other withdrawals such as benzodiazepine, alcohol, and other types of substances. We also provide some reentry planning and care management services. And we staff on my team also participate in the Touchpoint projects, focusing on individuals with OUD and co-occurring disorders. Next slide, please. A snapshot of our agonist medications prescribed in the jail in March is up here. It's about, we had about 800 inmates who were at any given time in March on buprenorphine, and about 100 individuals on methadone in the jail system at that time. Some statistics on the average length of stay in most jails nationally is about 26 days. In Orange County, because of the state realignment law, our length of stay is a little bit skewed. Our longest individual that's been with us continuously has been here for almost 18 years. But in 2022, a majority of our individuals, close to 60% of our bookings were in for only less than 1 week. And over 90% of our bookings are in for less than 3 months. And every day we release, or in every month we release dozens of inmates on agonist treatment and in need of medication continuation. So building out this sort of collaboration with the community providers is really imperative so that they can continue these medications after they leave. Rich?
You want to go on to the next slide, please? Okay, I'm going to do this very quickly. We're running out of time, and I do want to provide for time for questions. And as Dr. Chang mentioned, I was the coach for the Touchpoints project, and it was a really great opportunity for the Jail to Community Reentry Program, JRCP, to provide a intensive coordination and collaboration to ensure that individuals who were receiving MAT now, which was, or medication-assisted treatment, primarily at the time buprenorphine, were in fact linked to services in the community. JCRP has been in the jail for some time, working with individuals with mental health disorders. Can we have the next slide, please? So what happened during the collaborative team, and this collaboration, this coordination of services is really our new frontier to do the work that we have to do. There are many services available in our communities, and how do we wrap these services around an individual to meet their very complex needs, as Rich pointed out, and as others pointed out in the presentation. these are very complex needs and for services and matching to services. So what did happen was the collaborative team was able to add, and you can see those in red, providers that would accept clients and referrals from JCRP, and that was KCS, the FQHC, Matt Connect, and the Santa Clara, the Health Services Agency's Santa Ana Clinic. Next slide, please. So here are just some of the successes that occurred. And one of the largest successes was when we started 18 months ago or 2 years ago, KCS was really the one FQHC actively receiving referrals. And now with Matt Connect, which is a warm handoff for looking for Matt services, there are now 16 FQHC clinics CalOptima supports. Matt Connect is a CalOptima project that can help assist individuals to connect with Matt. Why is that primarily and most important? Rich mentioned it. We must stabilize individuals and connect them with the medications, even to have any hope of stabilization and engagement in the community. So there was a community navigator that was added to the county clinic staff from the Santa Ana Clinic that was able to support the work. The ex-waiver providers in the county HHSA enrolled in the pharmacy service, which was able to access pharmacy services immediately after release. There was IT support, but minimal, and that's one of the areas for the greatest amount of work to be done in the future. And interestingly enough, probation became one of the strongest collaborative partners and saw themselves in a role of supporting the transition and discharge plans that were given inside custody. In the past, you may know or not know, but only a limited number of individuals who are released are on probation. But there is a beginning there to build a collaboration with probation. Next slide, please. So some considerations and best practices. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that we've given you this information from the Justice Center of the Council of State Governments. It's pretty straightforward, and just to be aware of the time, I'm going to make a few summary statements about this and move on to some questions. The most important thing of all of this, there's good work being done in jail, there's good work being done in the community. It's the coordination of these services, it's the connection, it's wrapping these services around individuals who are leaving custody, because the recidivism rate is extremely high. And with services, we may be able to change the course if we connect people and give them access to the services they need. So this concept of wraparound is critically important to our work that we do in the CalAIM environment. The most important aspect of all of this is also making sure individuals have their medications in the community. So what is that transition? How does that occur? Orange County has been very successful in integrating Sublocade, which is a long-acting injectable form of medication, and that gives the individual time to connect with a pharmacy or find a Sublocade clinician or practitioner. But that medication is critically important because the overdose rate is excessively high for those leaving incarceration. We have fragmented system. Once we get out into the community, we all know that there's many services, but they're not necessarily linked or connected. It's confusing. And how do we achieve engagement? Well, warm handoff is critical. And when I say warm handoff, this is, in my mind, best delivered by peer counselors. And of course, transportation is a critical need. So those are the highlights of just to get going in a recovery direction once we have an individual enter the community. I guess one of the last things I'd say to everyone to think about, especially listening to Project Kinship's presentation today, was so meaningful and inspiring to hear their mission and their work that they are doing. Listen to the people that you're serving. In providing these services, integrate into your actual business, into your agency work, asking the people you serve how to achieve the goals that they need to achieve in their lives. And then finally, ask the staff who are on the ground, boots on the ground, is our greatest agency asset, and ask them how to improve the outcomes for the population. I'll turn this back to you, Rich, so that you can we can perhaps have some questions.
I believe, Tiffany, you wanted us to hold questions for the Q&A portion. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We'll go
Okay.
ahead and we have one more presentation on CalAIM, and then we'll invite everyone back for the Q&A portion. So with that, I want to thank HMA. It is really critical to understand the data behind what we're seeing that was shared from Project Kinship, and also learning what collaborative efforts are taking place and in different levels, as well as Orange County, what's happening in our systems as well. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our final presenter, Andrew Kilgust. Andrew has been with CalOptima Health for 5 years, leading teams in the development and implementation of Medi-Cal programs for the agency. And as part of the Medi-Cal and CalAIM team here at CalOptima, Andrew has been deeply involved in the development of enhanced care management and community support services. Prior to CalOptima Health, he worked at DHCS, developing Medi-Cal managed care policy, and holds a master's degree in clinical psychology. Please join me in welcoming Andrew Kilgust.
Thank you, Tiffany. Really excited to be here. We can go to the next slide. Not just to share some information about what we're doing here at the agency at CalOptima Health, as it's very exciting, but again, to be with our community and really to listen to those who are doing such great work out there in our community, like Project Kinship. And then I think the other thing too is it's really, although it's disheartening, it's great to see the data that HMA and Dr. Chang discussed with us earlier, so that you can see why this is such an urgent problem. And finally, the Medi-Cal managed care plans do have the ability to implement services that can really wrap around a person who needs this type of help, reintroduced back into the community. So for all of you who don't know about CalAIM, I'm not going to read off this slide, but it's a huge endeavor for the state's Department of Healthcare Services to transform the Medi-Cal program overall, and really to start introducing services and benefits that can impact a member's social drivers of health versus physical healthcare alone. You can go to the next slide. I think the really big opportunity that CalOptima Health has, California has, and with the help of the Department of Healthcare Services, is to really break down barriers between agencies. For those of you who work in this field in California, you know that physical health and behavioral health, as well as substance use disorder services, are all in different silos. But CalAIM, this really gives us the opportunity to break through those silos and make sure that we're coordinating care for our most vulnerable members. As you've heard today, justice-involved members have higher rates of physical and behavioral health diagnoses and really require more intensive care and care coordination. Like I said, those opportunities are here today, and we're really excited that we've been out ahead as CalOptima Health in implementing these benefits. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit from this current slide and just tell you that we started this year 2022 kind of putting our toes into the water with community supports, and we started with 4. But as of January 1st of 2023, we will be one of the only Medi-Cal plans who've implemented all 14 community support services. We're really excited. It is still the first year, so we will be working really hard in the next few years to make sure that these programs continue to do the things that they need to do and benefit our community. The other thing that we've been doing throughout this year, which is mainly because we haven't gotten a real implementation deadline from the state yet for certain in-reach services for Medi-Cal members while they're in a justice facility. But we have been working behind the scenes with a lot of different partners, including the county, our SSA, local SSA office, the sheriff's department, as well as some community-based organizations to work on the process behind the scenes of connecting members who are being released to services and to Medi-Cal eligibility. I've seen a question already, and that's really one of the biggest hurdles, is that depending on how long a person is incarcerated, can also impact their Medi-Cal eligibility and whether it has been disenrolled, which can take then a long time to get someone back on. So we're working on trying to address that issue here in Orange County as well. We can go to the next slide. I'm going to give you a brief overview of enhanced care management, which is the highest level of care management that Medi-Cal plans offer. These populations of focus are important because it determines which eligibility criteria have been implemented. So you can see that already we're serving members who are unhoused or experiencing homelessness, those who are using a hospital or emergency department as their primary care, those with serious mental illness or substance use disorder, and we're contracted with the county to provide the service, adults with intellectual or developmental disabilities, and then adult pregnant or postpartum individuals at risk for adverse perinatal outcomes. You can go to the next slide. This is what's really important, I think, for today's discussion. As you can see on the bottom there, it's still TBD when we will go live for the justice involved for enhanced care management. There are ways that we can get members in because they most likely also are eligible through another population of focus. But I want to put that out there that the state is still negotiating with the federal government on when this can go live. Go to the next slide. We can go to the next slide again. So again, this benefit is really the highest care coordination, care management benefit that we can offer here at CalOptima Health. And you can see that how a member would become eligible. Like with any healthcare benefit, there's often complex criteria for eligibility. You can go to the next slide. And most of it's around making sure there's no duplication of care between different silos or different agencies. Again, what I wanted to say, we can go back to that last one. What I wanted to say here is that there are 2 levels of case management below ECM as well. And depending on members' needs at that time, they can move in between those levels. You can go to the next. And the next. Community supports. Like I said earlier, we're really, really excited to be one of the only Medi-Cal managed care plans in the state to have implemented all 14 community supports. For those of you who don't know, these used to be called in lieu of services, and they're really more social service type benefits in place of physical health care. So we can go to the next, so that I can give you an overview of all 14 that we've implemented. And you'll see on the bottom the actual date that we started providing these services. So the 4 that we started in January of 2022 were recuperative care. And this is a maximum of a 90-day stay at a facility that can provide interim housing, monitoring, and make sure that a member is stable before they move on to their next housing situation, or if they need to go back into a higher level of care. And then we also started providing housing support. So housing navigation, which is searching for housing, $5,000 housing deposit to use for first and last, and as well as utilities. And then housing sustaining or tenancy services to help members navigate renting, leasing, also just navigating being sometimes inside of an apartment and understanding what things need to happen, like putting trash out, paying for bills. You can go to the next. These three community supports we implemented in July of this year, and that's short-term post-hospitalization housing. Similar to recuperative care, although a less intense medical need and can go for as long as 6 months. Personal care and homemaker services. This is really someone who can help, much like an IHSS worker, to assist members with activities of daily living. And then sobering centers. This is our partnership with Be Well OC, where members can stay at their campus for less than 24 hours to stabilize after being publicly intoxicated. You can go to the next. Two others that we implemented in July are day hab programs, which is really allowing members to retain and improve their skills so that they can continue to reside in the community. And then another really interesting new benefit is meals and medically tailored meals. Right now we are providing both medically tailored meals, which is up to 2 meals per day that are delivered to a person's home, as well as weekly grocery boxes. You can go to the next. Whew, let me take a deep breath. We have 5 more that we'll be implementing here in less than a month, in a couple of weeks, in January of 2023, which is respite services. So allowing someone to come in to give a break to caregivers. And then these 2 benefits, which are to help members stay in the community, as well as transition back from a facility to the community. So very interesting new services that we'll be launching here soon. And then 2 more, I think, on the next slide. And that's home modifications and asthma remediation. Both of these would be there to assist members' homes should they be actually impacting their own health. So home modifications would most likely be like adding grab bars or ramps to a person's home. And asthma remediation would be an assessment, as well as any services that were needed to remediate mold or anything else that's impacting a member's asthmatic symptoms. You go to the next slide. And this, I think, is probably really the most interesting portion for this group, which is that we're really excited to be pushing out a new ECM provider network training this next calendar year in 2023 and starting in January. Our goal is to try and train a total of 30 FQHCs and CBOs by 2024 to begin to be able to provide ECM to our members. One thing I want to say about that is that the philosophy here at CalOptima Health is that we really want to contract with any and all providers in our community, because we know that the more that we contract with, and the more that we contract with those who are meeting our members on a daily basis, the more we'll be able to provide these services. So one thing I want to say is that if there are any organizations out there today listening in who are interested, please flood my inbox. We're always looking to enhance and improve our network for both ECM and community supports. The other thing that's really great, and I heard KCS was mentioned earlier, we are really looking forward to including some of the FQHCs and CBOs that are already working with our justice involved members to make sure that Again, we're not adding complexity to the system or process, but really making sure we're meeting our members where they are. You can go to the next. These are some other some goals and development that we are going to be working through this year, which is hopefully to develop with our providers short-term post-hospitalization housing for those who are recent released and who have complex physical or behavioral health needs. Partnerships with CBOs, like I said, who are, and maybe even one that was speaking earlier today, we're hoping to contract with us for rehabilitation programs. And then we also, the other thing that's out there for our providers is that there is a lot of incentive payment and incentive dollars out there to develop CalAIM. So we're looking also to use that money to create maybe even a vocational skills and job placement program. And if some of you who have been plugged into Medi-Cal lately, you've heard that the community health worker benefit has gone live. So we want to see how we can integrate CHWs as well into this model. You go to the next slide. I think the next are CalOptima health resources for CalAIM. And I think the other thing to look out for is that we are revamping our website, and I'm hoping that it's going to be live before the 1st, if not shortly after. So it will make it a lot easier to navigate. And there's some DHCS resources as well. I think that's it for me. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Andrew, for presenting on behalf of CalOptima Health. We are right on schedule. So at this time, I'd like to invite our panel presenters to turn on your cameras and open up your mics for the Q&A portion. We did receive some questions in advance of today's event, and we do also have a series of questions in our Q&A box as well. So with that, can we have our presenters back on the screen? All right, I'll go ahead in the interest of time. I will start asking some of the questions that have been posed. One of the questions is related, and I believe this one's for HMA. What is DHCS's role in defining how justice-involved individuals can receive services?
So I'll take a stab at that. DHCS doesn't really define how individuals can receive services in a correctional environment, because that's not really, county jails are not under DHCS purview. What they do provide, as I noted in the presentation, is quite a bit of funding support, candidly, for initiatives that allow counties to access, as Dr. Chang referenced, ongoing coaching and a number of other initiatives. So I would say they're probably their primary role, well, maybe not primary role, but maybe their most significant role is in supporting access to resources, particularly in county jails, to advanced evidence-based treatment, because they're funding numerous initiatives. I mean, that's what was even just being referred to related to CalAIM as well, through both state and federal funding resources.
Great.
Dr. Chang, Liz, accurate from your perception, or anything to add?
I would just add, put a pin in the fact that the largest role that Department of Healthcare Services has is the oversight of Medicaid and the Medi-Cal benefit. And the game changer here is if we do allow Medicaid, Medi-Cal services to occur inside 90 days or for some period prior to release, because an enormous amount of transition and services could be provided, and transportation and all the community supports could be linked in very carefully. But we don't have federal approval yet for that in reach.
And we should note that's not California's effort to address that through CalAIM. California is one of, I think, 6 states with seeking approval for some variation on that theme of benefits and coverage, which is one of the other questions, being funded via federal Medicaid funds while incarcerated. That isn't a California rule, that's a federal rule. And that's why, as Andrew was referencing and Liz is referencing, we're still waiting on federal approval. The wheels of government can turn somewhat slowly at the federal level.
Mhm.
All right, thank you for your responses. And really at the heart of collaboration, there's a question here. I'll open it to the group. What are some justice impacted collaborative meetings, groups in Orange County for ongoing learning and sharing resources? Is this group aware of any collaboratives specifically focused on justice involved? I think there's a strong interest in ongoing learning.
I am not aware.
I'm not aware either. This
I'm
is a
not
great
either.
question.
It is.
And I know there have been some smaller groups who have gathered in the community. I know OCREP was in existence before. Outside of that, I don't think there is one yet. We're hoping to collaborate for 2023. And I don't want to recreate the wheel, but possibly create one together. But I think one that's been consistent and ongoing. I think we could probably create a larger one. Yeah, and I think folks like OC Bar, Project Youth do phenomenal work. And so I know there are smaller gatherings happening. Hires out there with Megan. But I do think for 2023, we can get a larger collective going.
You know, the other opportunity that might exist, because it intersects with this topic, and I've been in meetings where they have discussed this topic, and then everyone sort of goes, okay, where do we gather? What's the vehicle? But Be Well Orange County is a phenomenal group of advocates and providers and work that's being done. And there might be an opportunity to give a stronger and louder voice to the justice involved population in that meeting.
Thanks, Liz.
For that.
I forgot to mention, we did have a gathering actually, the LAC meeting through our Prop 47 grant with the healthcare agency. We were meeting quarterly. That's ending in February. And so that's why it slipped my mind as well. But we were doing that quarterly, which was actually a good gathering of many stakeholders. But again, that grant's ending, so we'll see what happens in February.
Well, this year we were fortunate to host a conference at the Great Wolf Lodge in September, and we're looking forward to helping host another conference this coming year too. So that's something people can look forward to too, that we'll host again this coming year.
Fantastic. It sounds like there's a very engaged group that is interested in continuing beyond today's forum, and we'll have that directory to share. For Project Kinship, do you have presentations like this one to show or present to clients and the community?
Oh, for Maddie.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I know that we are very engaged. We love having active conversations with the community. To bring, again, like we said, bringing the voice of our members as well as each other as providers to close the gaps of services, to increase warm transitions to services, and ensuring that individuals are getting the care that they need. So absolutely, we facilitate any trainings we learn about. We always invite our staff and our participants to participate in. And then as well, if there are specific community partners or members that are interested in us helping provide or host a training, we're more than happy to do that too.
Thank you. Another question that is asked prior to today's event that was submitted is about maybe some of the challenges with working with individuals who are justice involved, like would you have recommendations on how to best support in terms of resources for individuals who want to better themselves, but they can't or they give up? Do you have recommendations on how to best serve?
I think Raymond's I catch him off guard. We call him the Good Shepherd because so many people follow him at Kinship. And so what's the secret sauce, Raymond?
I think it's really connecting and building the rapport.
Yeah.
Really being there for them. Because transformation is a process. And if you just walk with through that process, you'll get into a better place. That's where everybody falls short, is during that process. And just reminding them that it's not easy, and just being available for them. I believe that's one of the key things that has helped us be successful with this population.
Just to piggyback on that, at Kinship, we always focus on the welcome.
Mhm.
First 10 seconds, no matter what their response is to us, we're always focused. I didn't go to Nordstrom's for a long time, but I go once in a while now, and people always give them the Nordstrom experience. We're like, what the hell is the Nordstrom experience? And what I gather from that is just make people feel special, especially folks who are coming in. So we always, on the welcome, the first 15, 20 seconds, what's the welcome feel like? Is it a warm embrace? And then the last thing I'll say is, we always want to look beyond the symptoms of service providers, because you're going to get the hard exterior. I'll never forget one of the death penalty court experts said that when, I'm sorry, it's my dog, when he would have his clients come in, they'd come in with this hard exterior. And when he was doing therapy, he said he'd literally watch their face melt from this hard affect to more of a softer affect. After the session, going back to his prison cell, you'll see it come right back up, like you're putting your mask back on. And so part of it is, can we get to the heart? Can we create a safe interaction in space so that the mask can melt off? Because as we all know, what they're coming in to receive services, what they're experiencing in the community oftentimes is significantly difficult. And so just look beyond the symptom and try to get to a place through rapport and all the above to see if you can get the mask to melt off.
Yeah.
You remind me of a situation that we had at Venice, at Phoenix House of California, our Venice facility, and which is a residential and outpatient treatment. And we had individuals at that time being dropped off in their orange suits and shackles and coming in the front door. And within 24 hours, they were going out the window in the back of the building. And so we sat down together with the residents, with the individuals who were living there, who had had some experience and had some time. And we created a welcome wagon. And we did that both in our residential and outpatient service, where just sit down and talk to the person and offer them food and listen to their concerns and engage. And it's so critically important, because we're so busy as professionals running around and doing intakes and assessments and this and that. The human has to be in this. And that's what comes through all the work that you're doing at Kinship that's so important.
Thank you,
I wanted
Liz.
to add
a little bit also?
I just wanted to add that this is such a great conversation, that you guys do a great job at welcoming. I was also at the conference, and I've never been welcomed like that. So that was just fantastic. But also I wanted to add that, look at how I'm grateful, because look at the great people we have in this room working in Orange County. And we're just so excited that we can continue this work throughout this next few years, hopefully. So I'm glad we've given you all this platform today, because it's just so important. And I hope everyone here who's listening goes to their conference.
Thank you, Andrew. And I'll echo, it's all of that, and with consistency. And I think one of the most beautiful things that Steve has done is, from the onset of this organization to today, there's not one person that he doesn't stop to greet and say hello, so that they know their dignity and worth. And we all follow by that example. So it's the culture that we maintain together. We all take responsibility for together to make sure that that is consistent. That whether someone chooses to walk in today and leave upset, but they choose to come back 2 months or even a year from now, they're still going to get treated with that dignity, love, and respect, and know that this place is home. The services, each person that they meet with is a representation of home. So they have that connection, and that it's consistent. And we all carry that with the highest regard, all of us daily. And so just thank you. We hope to continue to manifest that daily. And I know, Sylvester, I think you wanted to add something there too.
Yes, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so as far as our population, right, that are coming out of prison, It depends also how long they've been incarcerated.
Mhm.
Most of the time,
It's
the
changed.
longer you've been incarcerated, the more isolated you want to be when you're released, right? You're not used to being so much around so many people, especially when they're looking at you, when you feel like maybe they're criticizing you, they're judging you. So I think just the best thing we can do to receive our brothers and sisters that are being released, it's just like what someone said, just give them the welcome. Welcome home. How are you? What's your name? Just engage. Ask them, how are you? What do you need? What are you thinking? What are you going through? How can I be of service? What do you need at this moment? That, listening to them, listening to their story, listening to what they went through. Talk about healing. That is healing in itself. Just being able to share what's on your mind, what you've encountered. That's a relief. And I think that is one of the things that Project Kinship, we do. We listen to our families, and that's what they are. And we're able to build that connection. Once you build that connection with someone, they're able to really share and be personal with you and confide things that maybe they haven't told anyone because they're afraid of being judged and criticized, because that's all they've experienced in their lives. So to be able to listen to them without judgment, without criticism, without scolding or looking down on them, that gives them the confidence to continue to open up and share, and encourage them to participate in healing circles, in recovery circles, so they could begin to heal from those internal wounds and be able to build confidence within themselves, to not give up, to continue to strive and overcome adversity. Thank you so much.
Silvestre, thank you so much. That is so valuable and so impactful to hear from you firsthand, and for sharing it with the community that is working together. I'm going to shift over to a data question because I know data was shared. There's a question. I know in the PowerPoint there was like national stats as well as some state. There's a question in terms of how community members can find data via legislative reporting, county to state, open data portal. Does HMA or other individuals know where we might be able to find specific data in Orange County?
Yes, Tiffany, do the participants have access to the deck? Because I know we included references in the deck. So I would point folks there. A number of the sources I regularly look at include prison policy initiatives, Pew Prison Policy Initiative, Pew Charitable Trusts, the Vera Institute, the Public Policy Institute of California. Did I say Bureau of Justice Statistics? I'm sorry. And the National Institute on Corrections. I think I want to make sure I have all my sources right, but those are regularly in doing this work, sources and sites I look at. Not sure if you can tell, it's colder and darker here. I'm not in California. So folks locally might have some other data sources.
I was going to mention the California Overdose Dashboard. I don't have the
Good
link.
one.
Yeah, that will take you right to Orange County's. The data is there's always a delay, but it will take you to a interactive dashboard where you can actually identify stimulants, overdose, hospitalizations, emergency room visits, in addition to opioid, and I believe fentanyl is on there now as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Another question that came in that was pre-submitted was regarding services for tobacco cessation. Are they being integrated into SUD treatment for formerly incarcerated individuals? Also, will programs of this topic also benefit the older adult population? So I'll leave that open to this group on our last two questions.
I would defer on the tobacco question related to the community side to folks providing community treatment. The older adult population, obviously, it isn't your primary population, but I mean, every demographic Dr. Chang can speak to shows up in a county jail, including older adults. So that definitely would apply. Not the most prevalent demographic in county jails, but definitely older adults are being treated in Orange County.
This goes to the fragmentation of services across the board. And generally speaking, tobacco initiatives are siloed initiatives in the public health departments, not integrated into mainstream medical. Well, that's not true. I think hospitals and others have their prevention efforts, but not integrated into the specialty mental health and specialty substance use disorder treatment systems.
Thank you for responding. Andrew, did you want to share as well?
I was gonna just say the same thing that Liz did. It's the siloization of serious substance use disorder treatment as California deems it versus outpatient or mild to moderate. So it's really a coordination of the providers working together.
And as we talk about this, I'd probably be remiss if I didn't say we all know the most common substance use disorder, correct? I mean, I'm not going to count coffee right now. I probably should, but alcohol use disorder, right? I mean, so that is, the death is usually slower, just to be really blunt and morbid. I'm not trying to be morbid before the holidays, everyone, but I think it's important to note that. I would also say more broadly in corrections, you also do see the demographics that you see in the rest of the country, which is an aging population in the prison settings, which also, I mean, when we talk about prison reentry, like CDCR in California, older population, more chronic co-occurring needs, more reentry needs. In addition to the notes Silvestri noted about how long somebody may have been incarcerated. I mean, think about if you've had a long sentence, the difference that you've seen over the last 10 to 15 years in cell phone usage alone would have to be a culture shock, I would think. I say that as an old guy of 51 years old and how much it's changed in my life.
And on that note, Rich, thank you for answering our final.
For being an old guy, you're welcome.
No. Thank you for closing our Q&A portion. Now, first and foremost, I want to thank all of our panel presenters for the amazing presentations, for sharing your expertise, the data, and the human interest behind all of this, which is really at the heart of the work that we do. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. I do want to add that CalOptima Health is hosting a virtual resource fair on resources to support housing in Orange County. We do have 4 sessions for youth, families, pregnant women, and adults. So we're hoping that you'll join us in this virtual space to learn about resources available in Orange County. We're also going to launch a survey at the end of this event. Your feedback is really valuable to us. So please take a minute to fill out that survey. And on behalf of CalOptima Health and the Community Alliances, I want to thank all of you for the work, the collaboration in supporting our members and their access to healthcare. And we are in closing, we're going to leave you with a powerful video. Please, please, please. I ask you to stay and watch this video. It really, I guess when they say images speak louder than words, this will tell the story with Project Kinship and really the purpose of today's event. So with that, if we could play the video.
I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe. Only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I'll find my worth, in you I'll find my identity. Oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe. Taking all I have and now laying it at your feet. You have every failure, God. You have every victory. Oh, you say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe, oh, I believe, yes, I believe.
In closing, I just want to thank everyone again, our esteemed panel of presenters, our community partners for being a part of today's Community Alliances Forum. On behalf of CalOptima Health, I want to wish you all a beautiful holiday season. Thank you for your collaboration in 2022, and we look forward to reconvening in 2023. Take care, everyone. Stay well.
Thank you so much, everyone.